This is a CBC podcast.
Danse, Anine, Boujou, hello and welcome. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Rosanna Dearchild. The Juno Awards were supposed to take place over the weekend, but they were cancelled as a precaution due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Every year, the event celebrates Canadian musical artists and bands. And since nobody's getting up on stage to perform or accept awards, today on Unreserved, we are shining the spotlight on those Indigenous Juno nominees. Think of it as our very own mixed tape. One of the most asked about artists that we play on this show is Reet. Her music blends electronic beats with throat singing and lyrics sung in Inuktitut. It's just really catchy. Her album, Atataga, earned her a Juno nomination for Indigenous Artist of the Year. And she joins me from Pangnirtung. Hello.
Hello.
First of all, congratulations on the Juno nomination. What?
Thank you so much.
I could hear your little niece back there that you're babysitting. She's like, thanks.
She's just copying everything that I'm saying.
So what did it feel like when you first found out that you were nominated?
It felt really good. I mean, I hoped that I would be nominated for the pop category as well, but Indigenous category is okay too, but I still have some feelings towards that.
Yeah. So you mentioned you kind of wanted to be nominated in the pop category. Why do you think it's important for Indigenous voices to be represented in those kinds of categories?
I think like the Indigenous category, it's not a huge problem to me, but I think the problem within that category is that there's Reet, Northern Haze, Heya Walk, Quay Cardinal, and Digga, who are nominated in the category, and all of the music that we play are very, very different genres of music. And as an Indigenous artist, I feel like a little bit put into a category.
A box.
And depending on our race, I guess. But when I listen to every record that's nominated in the Indigenous category, like it's very good music. I don't know. I just have some feelings towards it.
Yeah. Do you think it's time perhaps for that category to be let go in favor of widening that scope?
I don't know. I never really thought about it, but I'm just also afraid that if it were to be removed, will any Indigenous artists get nominated at all, you know?
Bit of a catch-22 there.
Yeah.
In addition to writing songs in Inuktitut, you host a kids show in the language as well. What did it mean for you to write songs in your language?
I think it's most important because, I mean, it's the language that I grew up speaking. It's my mother tongue, so I'm most comfortable writing in Inuktitut, although I've been, challenging myself to try and write in English a bit, but I don't know, it's my mother tongue, and I also just want to encourage the younger generation to keep speaking the language, and if they don't speak it anymore, to learn it. Yeah.
You dedicate your album to your father, who passed away 5 years ago, and the title of the album translates in English to My Father. Can you tell me a bit about him?
He was a very traditional Irish musician. He actually has 2 albums that he put out years ago. Yeah, he's a typical white man who came up to the north and married an Inuk woman. He passed away from cancer almost 5 years ago now. So I wanted to dedicate this record to him, especially because he passed away just as I was starting my music career, so he never really got to see where I went and where I've been going and what I've been doing. So, yeah.
Was he an inspiration for you as you were writing your music, or?
Yes, he was. But I always tell people that for the first time when I showed him a song that I wrote, it was all in Inuktitut. I always tell people that he kind of scolded me because he was like, I don't understand, you need to do, like, add some English lyrics in there. And he also hated pop music, so I always joke that maybe he would hate my music.
I'm sure he would love it.
Yeah.
So what other topics do you cover in the album?
There's basic breakup love songs, and then there's also a Me Too song about intergenerational trauma and growing up with a parent who went to residential school. Yeah, the record covers a bunch, but there's also more happier tunes. That's
a lot of heavy issues that you're dealing with. Why do you think it's important to sing about those things?
I think for Nunavut especially, I don't know how it is now, but when I was in high school, there was very small coverage of our own history. So I grew up having so many questions about why we are the way we are, or why we're struggling the way we are right now. And I know for a fact that, like, for me, when I was growing up, I always wondered if it was just my family, you know, or if it was me even. So, yeah, I wanted to write Ukausiseka to put that out there.
Mm-hmm. One of the groups that you're up against for the Juno is Northern Haze, and you also cover one of their songs on your album. And they're a bit of a legend in the North. How does it feel to share the nomination with Northern Haze?
It's amazing. They deserve it so much. They have been the hardest working band, and like, it's awesome because they don't even do it because they want recognition. They do it because they love it. They've been around for so long. It's very, very well deserved for them.
And very well deserved for you as well, Reet.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Meeting Juno Award nominees on the show today. Still ahead.
Anytime I feel nervous or anxious about whatever it is that I was about to go do, whether it was a certain stage or a certain conversation or talk or something, if I can regroup and refocus my energy into, talking to my ancestors, the ones up there that I speak to directly, I feel much stronger going into it. And so, I definitely think they're there with me all the time.
More from Juno nominee Quay in just a few minutes. But first,
as a breakup record, I tried not to be too mean.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just couldn't help it.
That breakup record is Kaylee Cardinal's latest, which earned her a nomination for Indigenous Artist of the Year. Our Kyle Musica visited with her in Edmonton to talk about that record from the place where it all began.
My name is Kaylee Cardinal, and I am a Métis singer-songwriter from Northern Alberta, and I have a Juno nomination for Indigenous Artist of the Year.
So tell me where we are right now.
We are currently in my apartment, which is very, very much downtown Edmonton.
And tell me what your album is called.
My album is called Stories from a Downtown Apartment.
So, I think if I can remember correctly, and I saw your album on the table here, is this the couch?
Yeah. All the album art is pictures from my apartment and from this area of downtown that I live in. But it's also my place of work. This is where I do all of my writing, and I just have to try to keep it as clean as possible so I can actually get something accomplished every day. But a lot of these songs, I sat at my keyboard, which faces the window, and looked out at downtown Edmonton and just kind of dreamily wrote songs on the piano. I tend to write songs on the piano first. And this is where it all happens. One of the main responses I get from people is that they love my voice. I have a big voice. I'm not trying to always be really loud and have a big voice. I really enjoy the use of dynamics in music, and I think that that's something that people really kind of respect, and they hear the control that I've had. I've been singing for so long. If I didn't have this kind of control, I should just quit. Another thing is that people relate to my songwriting because I'm very literal. The album is called Stories from a Downtown Apartment. One of the songs on the album is called I Don't Want to Know You Anymore. And that's what the whole song is about. And I think because it's so clear what these songs are about, but they're also... They are easily songs that can have different meanings at the same time. And I think people relate to them. Mm-hmm. But the song I Don't Want to Know You Anymore is one that I definitely sat and wrote right there at my keyboard and probably crying while I wrote it because I was letting go of somebody that I didn't want to let go of. And that was a hard song to write, but it was really cathartic. It really helped me get through. So a lot of these songs are basically my therapy songs. I think a big part of my career changing and getting stronger and me getting more notice happened after I recorded a full-length album. And what happened was in 2018, I ended up participating in the Indigenous Music Residency in Manitoba through Manitoba Music. And I met a group of people who absolutely changed my life. Sebastian Gaskin, Wolf Saga, Lacey Hill, Desiree Dorian, Isla Barker. I also met Kinney Starr, and I spent time with Leela Gilday there, and Alan Grey Eyes, who eventually became my manager. So this group of people are so connected in the Indigenous community that they spoke about me to other people, which helped just get the word across. And it's just, that group of people alone have absolutely changed everything.
Fast forward and tell me a little bit about a couple weeks ago when you get the call about being up for a Juno. What was that like for you? Well,
first of all, I had the date January 28th circled in my daytimer for a very long time. I knew they were coming out, and the thing about like entering competitions, contests, or submitting for nominations is, to me, it gives me a lot of anxiety because by nature and by nurture, I'm a pretty competitive person. I don't ever feel competitive with the Indigenous musical community. That's not what I mean by that. I mean, it's just there's a possibility that I could not get it. It's the winning and losing idea of it that causes me a lot of anxiety. So I knew it was coming, and what I did was prepare myself I was actually on an airplane coming home the night before, and I listened to my album, and I said to myself, I love this album. I'm happy with this album. This says everything I wanted it to. I'm happy with the songs. So if I don't get the nomination, it's okay. I'm okay with it because I'm proud of this either way. And for me, that was kind of what I needed to do. And then, the next morning at 9:10 in the morning, I got a text message from my manager, and he said, "Congrats." And I was in absolute disbelief. I was shocked.
What happened when you told your mom?
I called my mom, and she was driving to work, and she screamed and was so excited. She was just like, okay, let's do this. All right. And was just, she was just so excited. This is basically a family project at this point. My mother is co-parenting my son with me because I travel so much. I'm never home, and I've always been a single mother. So this is kind of like a family investment at this point. My son sacrifices his time, and we get together when we can. So this win for me, like just the nomination is a win, and it's for my whole family.
This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Iskway means woman in the Cree language. It's also the name chosen by alternative electronic singer Iskway. The moniker is an abbreviation of her traditional name, Wasisquan Isquayu, which means blue sky woman. Quay has been a powerful and unapologetic voice for the Indigenous experience in Canada ever since her self-titled album in 2013 and her follow-up Juno-nominated album, The Fight Within, 4 years later. Her third album, Achakosik, came out last month. It's been nominated for a Juno for Adult Alternative Album of the Year. Her video, Little Star, has also been nominated for Video of the Year. The Cree and Métis artist grew up in Winnipeg and is based in Hamilton. She joins me from Toronto. Welcome, sister.
Tanse.
Good to hear from you.
Likewise.
So tell me about your new album. What were you thinking and feeling about as you wrote these amazing songs?
Well, thank you, first of all. And this one was a piece that I wanted it to be a story from start to finish. So when I was putting all of the pieces together, I looked at this as a full narrative that was meant to share stories about culture and community and pride and art, in addition to some of the struggles and some of the more challenging conversations that are taking place within our community and society and so on. To create this like element of empathy, I suppose, so that when the challenging conversations started to peel back, when those layers started to come down, that would pre-exist, so that we would be able to move forward through those conversations with a warmer spot in our hearts for each other.
So much of your music, as you said earlier, you want to have these conversations, whether they're difficult or challenging conversations with people. And much of your music is very political. And I use that in air quotes because political means a lot of things to different people. What does it mean for you?
It means to be a part of the change that I want to see. So it means that, you know, my experiences of my loved ones, my family, my community, those, you know, people around me, I want to share those stories in a way that reaches people so that we can make change.
So why do you lend your voice in this way, Quay, when you could do very well by singing straight up pop songs and staying out of it? Why do you get in it?
You can't unsee what you've seen. And that's it. There's no other reason or rationale for me. I feel this way. I see these things, and it's now just a part of me. I didn't start off as a political artist, if you would, right? I started off as just an artist. And you know, when I sit back and I listen to the ones that come before us, Nina Simone, this is not a perfect quote, so don't quote me on it verbatim, but along the lines of it's an artist's job to reflect the time. And I really, really value that sentiment. And I think it's really important for us to use our platforms and our voices, you know, for those sorts of things. So it's less of a choosing and more of something that just is a part of my soul now.
And it's more than just your music and your lyrics. It's also your performance. When you perform on stage, you transform. You put on the face paint and some elaborate costuming, and you know you enter into this world. Why do you do that?
You know, it's funny. I'm learning more and more. I'm quite introverted when I'm not on, and then when I'm on, whether it's, you know, on stage or, you know, public speaking, any of those sorts of things, I tap into this different side of me. And, you know, sometimes I think I'm just a conduit to, you know, ensuring that somebody else is sharing these stories as well, right? And when it comes to how I perform, it's something that just comes up from the floor through my feet and then out my skull. I have no idea.
They say it's the ancestors. Do you believe that?
100%. Yeah. Anytime I feel or have felt nervous or anxious about whatever it is that I was about to go do, whether it was a certain stage or a certain conversation or talk or something, if I can regroup and refocus my energy into, you know, talking to my ancestors, my, you know, the ones up there that I speak to directly, I feel much stronger going into it. And so, yeah, I definitely think they're there with me all the time.
I want to spend some time talking about your videos, which are gorgeous and powerful.
Thank you.
Little Star, as I mentioned, was just nominated for a Juno for Video of the Year. And I have to say that when I watched this video, I wept. It really touched something inside. First, what story does this song and video tell?
This is a story of how the media was representing two of our Indigenous youth during the trials of the non-Indigenous men who were accused of their murders.
And of course, Quay, you are talking about the young lives of Tina Fontaine and Colton Bushy.
Yeah. And at the time of these trials, certain media in particular were quite reckless with the way they were running headlines and reporting on the cases and the stories. And it really hurt. You know, I don't mean that in any kind of simple way. I mean that in the most, if you could find the deepest nook of your soul and stick something sharp in there, that's what it felt like. And I didn't know what else to do other than to write this song. And the video really brings in that narrative.
And of course, we'll post a link to that video on our website at cbc.ca/unreserved. So, Quay, speaking of the Junos, how does it feel to be nominated again for your work?
It feels so good.
Yeah.
I was very excited. I was actually really surprised, to be honest.
Oh, were you? How come?
I don't know. I think it was just one of those things where when you create a piece of art, it's hard to imagine that people are going to respond or something. Like it's such a vulnerable place to be that I tend to shy away from it, and I'm just like, okay, here you go, and then I run and hide. So that's kind of what happened.
So what do you think it means, though, for particularly somebody who is Indigenous and also political to receive a recognition like this?
Well, yeah, number one, it's a huge honor, and I'm still kind of digesting it, right? Like, it's been a huge uphill climb for me, right? And it's a slow climb. And so I'm still kind of processing the sentiment of what it means to me and what it means to what I'm doing, and almost like taking a step back and going, oh, there's people who are on board with me on this. Like, they're a part of the conversation and they're a part of the art. And those two things are, like, I can't rip those apart if I tried. And so people are starting to support that in ways that they hadn't before for me, right? So it's pretty powerful.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Stay awesome, sister.
Thank you, my friend.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Quay is a singer-songwriter performer based in Hamilton. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. As you've been hearing, there's a huge diversity in the musical styles nominated for Indigenous Artist of the Year at the Junos. In fact, a lot of bands have their own unique sound. But when presented with the option to record with hundreds of one-of-a-kind instruments, that sound might transform into something completely different. That's what happened to Edmonton-based band Heya Walk. Last year, they took up residency at the National Music Centre in Calgary. Our Kyle Musica caught up with the band as they were about to play an instrument with an interesting name.
Hey everybody, this is Kyle Musica with Unreserved. I'm in Calgary to meet up with Edmonton-based band Heya Walk, and we just walked into a room with a synthesizer called Tonto. Now, Tonto is a one-of-a-kind synthesizer. It was made in the 70s, and it was used by artists like Stevie Wonder and the Isley Brothers. I mean, as you can hear, the band sounds like a bunch of kids in a candy store.
Where it gets really interesting is you can have multiple controllers on one control bus. So, like, the EMS could be on there and a sequencer, and they can be interacting in real time, which is kind of neat, especially with the sequencer. For some reason...
That voice explaining Tonto is Jason Talkin. He's an audio engineer at the NMC, perhaps the biggest nerd out of all of us, because he knows Tonto front to back after learning from its inventor, Malcolm Cecil.
But it works, it's just wrong.
Band members Matthew Cardinal, Jason Boris, and Chris Harper are behind him, learning about what all the dials and keys and pads do.
So this part of the instrument is kind of designed for live performance. The idea is you can like change octaves really quickly and that sort of thing.
Those three, along with Merrick Tyler, make up Heya Walk, which means people of the plains in Nehewewin, or Cree. Even though Harper, who plays guitar and sings, wasn't going to be too involved with Tonto during the residency, he was in awe as well. Can you just describe to us where we're standing right now?
We are standing, I suppose, in the, the bowels of Tonto. I don't know where we are. But it is somewhere where the sound is getting spit out at. So yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, we're here, just surrounded by it.
Picture it kind of like a mini Starship Enterprise. You stand in the middle with dials and modulators surrounding you in a half circle. Tonto is an acronym. It means the original new timbral orchestra. But when most people hear the name Tonto, they think of the Lone Ranger's Native American sidekick, and that brought up some conflicting feelings for the band.
It's quite an interesting machine. If you think of it, too, with the Lone Ranger kind of concepts being embedded in, Tonto, this was the Lone Ranger's space that we're in, actually. And he would only be using Tonto as an assistant to his methodologies. And I suppose we are, too, but in a way that's hopefully more eye to eye.
It's only been a few minutes, but the band is learning and understanding this machine as a living, breathing, contributing artist to their upcoming record set for release this fall. They're already seeing the instrument as more of a collaborator, an equal, than the Lone Ranger ever saw with the fictional Tonto. It's the same response Toolman and Bear Witness, or A Tribe Called Red, had when they worked with the instrument. Chris Harper said as Tribe started messing around with it, it completely transformed their upcoming album.
You can take a lot. You can also easily get overwhelmed. And I could totally understand a lot of artists coming into this environment just being like, oh my gosh, like getting lost here, for instance. Even talking to Bear Witness, he said once Tonto, the sound of it came out and they put it on one track, he was just like, this has to be on the whole album. One of the things that Bear also mentioned to me about that, which I thought was an incredible, again, juxtaposition, but they were able to do a masterclass with Malcolm Cecil. And so Malcolm, I don't know if you've seen him, but he dresses in white, like the Lone Ranger, but he's got a cute little afro, and he's this old guy, and he's an incredible engineer. Anyway, he came into, I suppose, this room, Bear said, and Bear and Toolman were like pitching, like they had some stuff going, but they were like live pitching it. And he said he turned around and Malcolm was almost weeping with his cell phone out, being like, that's why I created that machine. Like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think it would get used like that, like in my lifetime.
And then all the sequencers show up on here too. So like if you want
that juxtaposition, the Indigenous electronic group taking the reins of a machine and working with it as an equal, really hit home for Harper.
The black cable is surplus from an Apollo mission. And the gray cable is surplus from a Boeing 747. There's like a snare roll that's really cool, and like, is there yeah, so we just have to patch it in.
Heya Walk calls themselves moccasin gaze, which is an indigenous twist on the shoegaze genre. Imagine a song where every instrument is the same volume, including the vocals. Every band member, every instrument, every sound, equal. Heya Walk's music takes guitars, drum kits, bass, synths, and mixes them with traditional indigenous sounds, like box drums or the rhythm of the North Saskatchewan River. So they've had a lot of experience weaving new sounds into their music.
I don't know. It's been feeling pretty natural. Like we have like older drums, hand drums, and we've used a log drum and like a very large box drum that we've borrowed from people out on the coast, and we just kind of like incorporate those sounds, things we have from memories, and like there's songs with like honor beats, like powwow honor beats in it, and it's just something that I think we like to incorporate. And it's kind of like, if you know, you know.
I can't wait to listen to your record and be like, there's Tonto.
So yeah, I hope it's almost like another member. It's a whole other being. It's kind of its own thing. It's pretty much alive.
For Unreserved, I'm Kyle Musica.
That's it for this week's episode of Unreserved. We'll be back in this radio space next week for more community, culture, and conversation. This episode was produced by Kyle Musica, Stephanie Cram, Zoe Tennant, and Anna Lazowski. I'm your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild, coming at you from Winnipeg in Treaty 1 territory. Thank you for listening to Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I go say.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.